Welcome back to the garage, everyone. We are here, I am here, my good friend Kieran is there.
This one.
And we are back working on the Suzuki Address 110 today. We seem to have accidentally become the go-to guys for Suzuki Address 110 questions, which is cool, but a little bit unexpected.
Yeah, we're not obviously official kind of Suzuki sponsored kind of dudes just yet.
Not yet. I do ride a Suzuki. Kieran has seen a Suzuki in the street, and that
ran from it screaming.
That's about as qualified as we get on this. Anyway, we've had a question, and the question was how to change the front brake pads on the Suzuki Address 110. So that's what we're going to have a look at right now. Let's get to it. The first thing to do when you are doing your brake pads is to remove the caliper. And there are two bolts holding that on. Kieran, what size are they?
Well, you want to grab yourself your 12mm and get them knocked off.
Alright, so they are 12mm times 2. So Kieran's just removed the 12mm bolts, and there they are in his hand. And the caliper is now free to be removed from the brake disc. And it just pulls off like that. You can see the brake pad there, and another one here. So now we're going to take them out. On the back of the caliper then you will see this little nubbin that Kieran is
Twizzling.
rotating, and we need to remove that first, so you can use a screwdriver
Either, yeah, just to kind of get in there and leave it out, or with little pliers there. A gentle little tug and your job's done.
Excellent. And you'll also see now this little hole here, which takes a 4mm Allen key. So we're going to unscrew that.
When are we going to unscrew that?
Right now. What that does is it holds the pads in. You can see that's going all the way through the pads there. Incidentally, it is known to me and to other Suzuki Address 110 riders that is sometimes very difficult to remove. So as a matter of course, what I have done recently is to take that out and clean it up. And there was some grease on that when I put it back, which is gone now. But yes, take that out, clean it up, make sure that it's nice before you put it back in. Anyway, having removed that, we can now lift up pad number 1 and slide that off. And pad number 2 should just come out also, thereby leaving this. You can see the piston in there, which is what pushes against the back of the pad. And that is the end of that stage. So moving on, the brake pads that have just come out, and you can see on either pad there is a little line, a little groove, and that's your wear indicator. So the idea is that over time your brake pads will wear down, and eventually you won't be able to see that groove, and that means it's time to replace your pads. You can see that mine have got quite a way to go before they get to that point, so mine are okay, but we're going to pretend that I needed to do this, and we'll put some new pads in. Before we put the new pads in, we've just had a look at the caliper and clean that up a little bit with a little nylon brush to get rid of any junk that's stuck around
Debris.
There. Yeah, do go careful with that. And in there you will see this little piece here which springs up and down, and that's to help stop the pads vibrating and squealing. You may get a new one of those with your brake pads. If you want to replace it, it just pops out with a screwdriver. There's nothing else holding that in there, so you can replace that if you need to, and then move on to the pads.
Rightio. So the piston there is what pushes the pads against the disc, and obviously over time that's going to get further and further out, and when it comes to putting your new pads in there, they're going to be a little bit more chunky than the space provided. So we're going to need to press this back in to give us space, but we're going to probably have to tweak something up there to allow it to happen.
So the thing that Kieran was referring to there is the brake fluid reservoir, which lives just in there. And he was referencing that because as we push the piston back into the caliper, the fluid in the system is going to travel back in this direction and end up here. So it may be possible that this gets overfull or overflows. So we're going to have a go at this by just pushing this piston into the caliper. and I will keep my eye on the level which I can see through this little window here, and hopefully we won't need to start taking all this plastic off, but it may get to the point where we do, so we're going to find out. We'll just give it a go.
So the bit of forcing this piston back in, you're probably going to need something of a protrusion that's got some stiffness to it. So you can either go with a direct down the hole there to give it a press, or if you need to, you can work a bit of leverage from the side and press back in there.
We've pushed the piston in then about as far as it wants to go, which is probably far enough to put some new pads in. If it transpires that it is not enough and you can't get your new pads in, then unfortunately you are going to have to take the top off the reservoir, which will mean removing all this panel here, which we did in a different video. That was for changing the headlight bulb, I think, so there should be a link to that video up here, and you'll be able to see how to remove that, and it's just a case of taking the top off the reservoir so that the fluid can come back. Anyway, moving on, we are hypothesizing that this is the correct amount, so we're going to put some new brake pads in.
Okay, reassembly. This pad, you've got your handy indicator there where it's already been in place, which won't be on your new one, but you can see we've got that one eyelet on that side that's got the oval, and what we want to do is get a bit of this copper business on the back before we place it on here. Blue, 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 blue.
So this, dear friends, is what we lovingly in the UK call copper slip, and people's opinions on copper slip differ. Some people think it's fine, some people hate the stuff, but traditionally it is the stuff that you put on the back of your brake pads to stop them squealing. So for the sake of this video, we are putting copper slip on.
The thing to be very careful of is, oddly, it's great for the back but terrible for the front.
Do not get copper slip on your braking surfaces. First pad's in then, and as Kieran mentioned, the eyelet is ready for the pin thing that goes through there. It just push fits in. There is some flex in the shim, which I mentioned earlier, so you just have to force that into there. You can see that there is a little nubbin there which sits against the caliper body, and another one down there. So it is rather self-evident when you get to this where that should sit, and the correct answer is right there. So we'll put the other one in, and we're going to put a little bit of copper slip on the back of this one.
Difference being obviously that it only meets on these two parts here, so we wouldn't put it in the middle where there's a empty space.
Yeah, we'll do that and we'll show you what we mean. Kieran's put that copper slip on the back of that pad then, and now we're going to slot that into place. So it goes over the pin first and down in that direction, and you can see where we put the copper slip and why we've put it there now. So I hope that makes sense to you. And now we're going to put in the pin.
There it is.
Oh, there it is.
So there will be a little bit of having to press down onto the pads, because there'll be that little bit of flex from that shim underneath. But that should slide all the way through, and then we can tighten it down with that 4mm Allen.
There we are then, that pin is now seated all the way home, and just as a reminder, that sometimes does get stuck, so it might be that you want to clean that up before you do that. Here we are then, we're putting the little retaining clip thing back on. There is a groove on the slidey pin thing where that sits, so you will see that more clearly when it comes to doing your own, but it is there and you shouldn't be able to miss it. So that is the caliper back together, and we now need to put it back on the bike.
Check out me gap.
You can see Kieran's gap. You can see one pad is in there and the other pad is here, with a gap in the middle for the disc. It is very important, very, very, very important that the disc fits into that gap, because if you put the disc at the wrong side of the pad, you are not going to stop. That's going to end badly for you. So make sure that the disc is between the two pads. Start to reinsert the bolts, but just do them finger tight for now. There we are. So that is sort of back on. The bolts are not entirely tight, and if Kieran would kindly wiggle the caliper, you can see there's a little bit of play in the caliper. And we've done that, so that what we can do now is head up top here and squeeze the brakes. There's no resistance at the moment, and now resistance is building, and there we are. So what's happened is the fluid's gone back down through the system, pushed that piston back out, and is now pushing the new pads against the disc. And with that happening, the pads are seated squarely and nicely against the disc, and while I hold the brake on...
Are you holding on?
I am holding on. Kieran is
For a hero?
No, just for the brake caliper. So I'm holding the brake on and Kieran is tightening those bolts.
There may be a torque setting somewhere, but just get them on tight.
Yeah, just do those tight. Last thing to do then, before you put all your tools away, is to take the bike off the stand and push it up and down a little bit and test your front brake to make sure that you're happy that you're going to stop before you go out for a ride.
Because it's a bit late if you need to stop and you can't, but you wanna, but you can't because you...
That would be terrible. Do bear in mind also that when you put new brake pads in, they take a little bit of time to bed in. So for the first, let's say, 100 miles to be on the safe side, just be aware that your braking might not be quite as good as you used to. So just go a little bit careful. So there we are, that's how to do the brake pads on your Suzuki Address 110. Woo! We hope that it was helpful. We shall see what lovely questions you come up with next. We do seem to get all the random questions, and we look forward to each and every one of them.
I'm out.
That is that job. See you later.